Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and we're about to finish up the Raw draft and go through some notes from Monday Night Raw. The first thing we need to realize is this show was absolute pain. It was terrible. This is, oh boy, Raw just finds ways to be bad for no reason. It was a bad show. Let's go through the draft though. So we're gonna go through the draft. We're gonna go through what took place on the actual episode of Raw. Of We're also going to go through the episode of the Talking Smack draft. So from the Talking Smack, we get that Murphy was drafted to SmackDown, Kalisto was drafted to SmackDown, and Chad Gable was drafted to SmackDown. Raw got Humberto Carrillo, Tucker, and Drew Gulak. So Tucker is drafted to Raw. Otis is drafted to SmackDown. Heavy Machinery has been broken up. A lot of people have lost their minds because Heavy Machinery was broken up. The New Day was also broken up. And people were kind of upset about that. I see. WWE doesn't care about tag teams. They don't give a shit about tag teams at all. They only care about two teams. They only care about one team on each brand at a time. They don't care about tag teams. I don't know how many times people have to say that. Now, the actual draft itself from was pretty boring because again, it was people who were already on the show getting drafted to the show. For instance, Bayley got drafted to SmackDown. Of course she did. She was already on SmackDown. She's the SmackDown Women's Champion. Now, a positive is the Street Profits got drafted to SmackDown. Now, they did a cool segment with because the New Day were drafted to Raw. So they did a cool segment where all they did was have New Day and Street Profits switch championships. So they just exchanged titles. So now the Street Profits are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions and New Day are the Raw Tag Team Champions. And it was just a simple segment. It was good. That was really simple, really good. That's all they needed to do. And that was great. That was fun. I enjoyed that. The Street Profits are going to be cooking on SmackDown because WWE actually likes the Street Profits. They're the only tag team WWE really likes other than the New Day. So Daniel Bryan was drafted to SmackDown. He was already on SmackDown, so it didn't matter. Kevin Owens was actually drafted to SmackDown. This is actually good. Unfortunately, this means he's on the same brand with Sami Zayn, who was also drafted to SmackDown, but he was drafted to SmackDown much later. He was drafted to SmackDown in the 4th round. I don't know much about these round systems because I really haven't watched a draft, especially like a football draft or a basketball draft since I was a kid. But I know if you don't go in the first couple of rounds, that just kind of means that you're not really all that important. And Lara Sullivan and King Corbin was drafted before Sami Zayn. So, yeah, and Sami Zayn's the Intercontinental Champion. But Kevin Owens being on SmackDown is a good move. Lara Sullivan being on SmackDown is a decent move. I was going to make a separate video to talk about Lara Sullivan because, of course, Lara Sullivan was accused of asking some yoga instructor for booty pictures. And I had a whole entire video about that because these people have this hate boner for Lara Sullivan. And it's just anything that the guy does, people feel like they have to overreact. Like the guy made some pretty bad comments when he was a teenager, which since the guy's in his 30s now, that was a long time ago. Who the fuck cares? Like people have to eventually you have to get over shit, okay? And people just want to hold stuff over people's head forever. Like, no, man, I don't have time for that type of stuff. Yes, there's things that people can say and do that I was going to be like, okay, get rid of them. But Lars Sullivan is such a guy that I don't care if he's there or not. Okay, I'm not going to be on a spree to get Lars Sullivan fired. I don't care. Not for something that he said over 10 years ago. If somebody was to find out some of the crazy shit that I said when I was 19, hell, you'd probably throw me in prison if that's going to be the case. You know, there's some crazy stuff I wouldn't say on YouTube that was a regular part of my conversations at 19. You know, like you think I cuss a lot now. I mean, just imagine a 19-year-old, he's pretty bad. I mean, get over it. People are pretty bad at online culture. Another thing is the gay porn star stuff. I see like Hannibal TV. I don't really watch a lot of Hannibal TV, but I do follow his because he do have good interviews sometimes, or he might be talking to somebody who might be interesting. But he's just obsessed with like gay porn star Lara Sullivan. He's still on SmackDown. What do you think about that gay porn star Lars Sullivan? I mean, he just talks like his brain is, encased in amber. In any event, he's just like gay porn star Lars Sullivan, gay porn star Lars Sullivan. And I'm like, is that necessary? Do we have to beat the drum that he was a gay porn star? Yes, the motherfucker did gay porn. Can he please move on? Can he? It's not like him being a gay porn star is part of his current character or his current personality, or something like that. I should just be able to watch people on TV without having to be bombarded with everything they did outside the business. That's the same thing with this, him asking for booty pics from this yoga instructor. So fucking what? A dude's trying to hit. Who cares? He's trying to get laid. You want to cast every guy into a fucking oven because he want to get laid? Fuck, who cares? Ain't guy gonna lose his job because he wants to fuck some broad. Get the fuck out of here. So King Corbin gets drafted to SmackDown. Who cares? He was already on SmackDown. Sami Zayn was already on SmackDown. Who cares? Cesaro and Nakamura already on SmackDown. Who cares? Ziggler and Rude moved to SmackDown. Okay, that's interesting. I think they're going to have to break them up. Because Ziggler and Rude lost tonight to the New Day. They wanted a tag team championship match. They felt like they earned it. Rude got back-to-back title shots, which is really weird. And Ziggler and Rude lost again. I think that they need to break this team up. I know that Ziggler really likes them, and I think a Ziggler versus Rude is actually fun. As long as Rude is the heel. I think this could be fun. If Ziggler versus Rude. I don't want them as partners anymore. I don't see how they became partners in the first place. I don't even remember how that happened. And I know that Ziggler has sort of been on he was, playing the trumpet to get Robert Roode back. And I love Bobby Roode. Man, I was just watching TNA pay-per-view earlier. It's on YouTube, actually. It's Bound for Glory 2012. The Rude Storm match. Oh my God, it was so good. Like, that feud was so good. It was fucking stupid though, because just a couple of months before Rude lost the title to Austin Aries, that should have been the main event. Storm versus Rude should have been the main event. I love Jeff Hardy too, but come on, man. I'm off the subject. I was actually talking about something good, not Raw. Apollo Crews got moved to SmackDown, which is a good move. Apollo Crews versus Sami Zayn could be a pretty good run. You get Apollo Crews away from the Hurt Business, which he's been entangled with forever. It was good to move him. We got one of the feuds that never ends. It's finally ended. And of course, it's completely ended now after the Ricochet Hurt Business match. We'll get to that later when we do our Raw review. Carmella was already on SmackDown, so I don't see what's the point there. Aleister Black has been moved to SmackDown, which is really good. Unfortunately, Kevin Owens is also on SmackDown. And unfortunately, Aleister Black got fucking pinned by Kevin Owens. Why? Don't know. Why can't Aleister Black beat Kevin Owens? What is the big deal? They changed his character and he's done nothing but lose ever since. He did not lose this much before they changed the character. And, whatever excitement. And look, Kevin Owens isn't like some job guy or anything like that, right? So losing to Kevin Owens is not that big of a deal, but it kind of proves that you're not going anywhere when you can't get over that hump. Because the Fiend beat Kevin Owens pretty easy. And, now, Kevin, and I know the Fiend is way up in the upper echelons of the company. He's supposed to beat Kevin Owens pretty easily, even though it was a good match. I would think that Aleister Black versus Kevin Owens would have been a better match, even though I didn't think it was. I think the Fiend versus Kevin Owens was a better match. But Aleister Black needs a lot. He needs something because he's struggling. And even though he still only lost his 5th match, it's only been 5. 2 of them to Kevin Owens, 2 of them to Seth Rollins, and 1 to AJ Styles. And that's still not bad for a guy who's been in the company for 3 years and spent a year and a half or 2 of them on the main roster already. He's got fewer losses than Braun Strowman. He's got fewer losses than Ricochet. That's for sure. But that's the SmackDown side. SmackDown got, let's go through SmackDown one more time. SmackDown got Murphy, Kalisto, Shorty G, Bayley, Street Profits, Daniel Bryan, Kevin Owens, Lara Sullivan, King Corbin, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, Bobby Roode, Dolph Ziggler, Apollo Crews, Carmella, and Aleister Black. Now, we're going to go through Raw, beginning with the Talking Smack part of the draft, into the regular draft. So from the Talking Smack, we learned that Humberto Carrillo was staying on Raw. He was already on Raw, so what? I mean, I think that he was better off with Dominic, but who knows? Who knows what they got planned with Humberto Carrillo? Tucker and Drew Gulak. Drew Gulak, I mean, he's just stuck, man. I would have preferred Gulak to go to NXT to hang out with Timothy Thatcher. That would have been fun. But, you know, hey, we can't always have fun. So, of their official picks, as far as the draft is concerned, they drafted The Fiend first. Good pick. The Fiend being on Raw is good for Raw. You know, unfortunately, you also have other people that are on Raw. But we'll get to them. But you drafted a top heel. That's a good thing. So at least they got a plan that maybe if Orton does not win the title, and maybe you don't want to go to Keith Lee, maybe you could do Fiend McIntyre. That'll work out just great. Especially for like Survivor Series and TLC. Oh, that might be awesome. They also drafted Randy Orton, who was already on Raw, so what? Charlotte was already on Raw, so what? Lucha House Party was drafted to Raw. I don't know what this means. You know, they broke up Lucha House Party. You know, Kalisto is on SmackDown. Gran Metalik and Lince Dorado are on Raw. Okay. I guess it helps their tag team division. Unless they're going to break them up too. But let's say Lucha House Party doesn't really matter. Braun Strowman was drafted to Raw, which is good because, you know, like I said before, you don't want similar characters on the brand. Lara Sullivan is a very similar character to Braun Strowman. You put them on separate brands. That makes sense. You only need one monster per brand, even though they kind of fucked that up with a later pick. Matt Riddle was moved to Raw. This is an interesting thing because I was going to make a separate video about this, but I might as well fold that into here too to cut myself down some time. Apparently, Seth Rollins made a comment the other day. I don't exactly know when, where he said he had no interest in wrestling Matt Riddle and that he would prefer if Matt Riddle just moved to Raw. So a lot of people just started kind of laughing when Matt Riddle got drafted to Raw because it was kind of like, damn, Seth really just said a couple of days ago that, you know, he has no interest in working with Matt Riddle, so he might as well move him to Raw. So that's two of one of the top stars that doesn't want to work with Matt Riddle. The first is Brock, who doesn't want to work with Matt Riddle. Apparently, I haven't heard Brock say it, but I'm pretty sure Brock is like, nah. And Goldberg also already said nah. And now Seth Rollins doesn't want to work with Matt Riddle. Now, apparently, this does not spin out of the whole sexual harassment lawsuit thing. Apparently, this springs out of Matt Riddle's wife having very negative things to say about Becky Lynch. Basically, that Becky Lynch doesn't work out and that she's jiggly and stuff like that. And she should get paid to work out or something like that. Because Matt Riddle's wife is like a bodybuilder or something like that. She's like an athlete. So she's got like super abs and everything. And so she apparently made some comments about Becky Lynch. And, you know, I guess Seth Rollins kind of took it personally. I think that's kind of weird because you really shouldn't blame him for something his wife said. Maybe you should, you know, go to him and say like, hey man, what's up with your wife saying that stuff about my girlfriend or my wife or whatever? And, you know, y'all hash it out amongst each other. You know, maybe you tell her not to do that. But then you also have Matt Riddle doing stuff and saying shit. And, you know, it's ugly. Either way, it seemed like Seth Rollins pushed a button and got Matt Riddle booted to Raw, which is hilarious. Hilarious. Jeff Hardy has moved to Raw, which I called. I wanted Jeff Hardy on Raw. Don't know why. I just wanted him on Raw. It's a great move. Great move for Jeff. He's been a SmackDown staple for a long time. He kind of needed something new. Jeff Hardy is a similar character to Rey Mysterio. You don't need that consummate babyface, because when you have a consummate babyface, you don't need to have too many of them in one place. So when you have like a permanent babyface like a Rey Mysterio or Jeff Hardy, that you're not ever going to turn either one of them heel, you have to layer them, and they have to be one A or one B or something like that. Neither one of them need a title, so both of them needs to be in high profile feuds. And you don't want to bump Jeff to being like the number 4 babyface or something stupid like that because you got Rey on the roster. So you just move one of them to one brand, move the other one to the other brand. That way they get to be in similar positions, similar styles, consummate babyface, your top ultimate babyface, even if they're not going to be the champion. They're your Ricky Steamboats. You catch my drift? Okay, so Jeff Hardy was needed. So Retribution was drafted to Raw. It was kind of dumb. For starters, they were already on Raw. Second, you still have the Hurt Business on Raw. I get that you wanted to have this Hurt Business Retribution feud, but you really only need one dominant faction per brand. I think I said this in my previous video. So when you have 4 members of the Hurt Business, you got like 6 members of Retribution. You really could just move Retribution to SmackDown. And then you also have the Fiend on Raw. So where does Retribution fall as far as being the heels are concerned? If Randy Orton is number 1 and the Fiend is 1A as far as your heels are concerned, and then that's the first 2 spots pretty much tied up. Retribution can only go higher than 3. Then you have the Hurt Business. So where do they tie in? Are the Retribution and the Hurt Business going to be 2A and 2B? When the spot, not that the spot is mostly open on SmackDown, but you could at least had a top faction on SmackDown. And then, of course, people are going to complain that Retribution wants to destroy the WWE. Why would you draft them? Because they're wrestlers. Okay. God damn. This is a thing where people want to outsmart themselves. It's like, again, when you start asking the questions of how does SpongeBob light a fire underwater, please stop it. You're doing too much. Yes, Stone Cold Steve Austin got into a fight with his boss every week. Why didn't Vince McMahon just fire him? ... Why didn't he fire him? If you want to use logic, why didn't Vince McMahon fire anybody who gave him any shit during the Attitude Era? He was legitimately the boss. People want to, they overthink stuff. Stop overthinking things. This is a PG show. It's for children. Stop it. Keith Lee, drafted to Raw. He was already on Raw, so what? Alexa Bliss is drafted to Raw, which is cool because she gets to be with the Fiend. Let's talk about it here. Alexa Bliss and the Fiend attacked Andrade and Zelina Vega, which was awesome. It was fantastic. I felt bad that Andrade lost. It sucks that he's just not catching on, but I know it's ESL stuff. It's his English. But it seems like they're going to put Zelina Vega and Andrade back together and maybe rehab that character. And, maybe do something different with Andrade. Now, do I think there's going to be a feud between Andrade and the Fiend? I don't see why. Andrade just lost to Angel Garza. So why would I believe that he could beat the Fiend? It would just be a cool storyline. It'll be a cool match or something like that at that point. There's no real reason to believe, but that it could still work because there's no reason to believe that Jey Uso could defeat Roman Reigns. So there's still a good reason to have that feud if that's what they want to do. But I don't think it's going to be a feud. I think it was just Bliss and Fiend establishing dominance. So, but we'll see. I'll be interested. Elias is moved to Raw. Elias is going to be feuding with Jeff Hardy. Apparently, he busted Jeff Hardy over the head with a guitar. Now, this is actually pretty interesting because a lot of people forgot that the Elias was taken out during the drunk Jeff Hardy storyline on SmackDown. That apparently Jeff Hardy was drunk and hit. Of course, we found out this wasn't really Jeff Hardy. But the best thing about this is the driver being the mystery man with red hair. Apparently, it's still a mystery. It wasn't Sheamus. So we still have an open mystery of who was the guy with the red hair. Because, I mean, it could have been the fella, but it wasn't the fella. It was somebody else. So who else could it have been with red hair that framed Jeff Hardy? I don't know. Maybe it's that guy who looks like Eric Rowan again. But Elias being back is interesting. I guess he was out recording an album because his album is going to be out October the 26th or whatever. Who cares? But Elias is fun in a full arena. I don't know how Elias is going to work in the Thunderdome with the virtual fans. I just don't think his character is going to work that well. And Elias still is not a good wrestler. I mean, he's just not. You know, he's basically this generation's honky tonk man. So, Lacey Evans was moved to Raw, which was a good move. She just needed something different. Maybe they're going to turn her babyface. I hope so. Give her another chance as a babyface. Sheamus was moved to Raw. Another good move. The fella is in a tough position due to there being so many heels on Raw already. So maybe you'll have to turn the fella babyface, which should be fine. You know, Sheamus as a powerful babyface works. You know, of course, he plays a similar character to Drew McIntyre. So that would be problematic because they're so similar in character. R-Truth, who was already on Raw, was drafted to Raw. Nikki Cross was drafted to Raw. Good idea because Alexa Bliss now has to feud with Nikki Cross, where she's going to interact with Nikki Cross, and that ought to be pretty fun. Dabba-Kato was moved to Raw, which is weird because Braun Strowman is on Raw. Again, you only need one giant per brand. Maybe you could have moved Dabba-Kato to SmackDown. I mean, not to SmackDown, but to NXT. I mean, a lot of people want Lara Sullivan fire. You could have moved Dabba-Kato to SmackDown, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. Titus O'Neil, who was already on Raw, was drafted to Raw, and he barely wrestles as it is. It's a waste of a pick as far as I'm concerned. Peyton Royce was drafted to Raw, which is fine. I would have preferred Peyton Royce on SmackDown, but okay. And Mr. Irrelevant, the last person picked in the draft, was Akira Tozawa. So it was. So I think Billy Kay was not picked. I don't know. They're probably gonna move Billy Kay to SmackDown, or they'll probably keep Billy Kay on Raw as a part of the thing with Peyton Royce. But they were pretty specific that Peyton Royce got picked and not Peyton Royce and Billy Kay because they're not together anymore. Ultimately, the draft sucks. It evened the rosters up a little bit. It's not as lopsided as it usually is. But they just put a lot of the same people on the same brand. They didn't really shake things up. They didn't switch the titles. They just switched the tag team champions, but that was really much it. There were some big moves, but it just wasn't good. And then this draft episode of Raw was just ugh. It was just ugh. All right, so let's go through the draft episode of Raw. Almost a half hour in, and I'm just now getting into the matches and angles. So the show started with a Randy Orton promo. Drew McIntyre had some words. They got into a fight, and they ended up fighting pretty much for the rest of the night. Kevin Owens versus Aleister Black had a good match, not a great match. Aleister Black lost again. I don't know why. Then there was two Miz TV segments. There was a really a segment with the Miz actually kind of explaining how Tucker ended up on Raw. That he used his USA Network connections because he has a television show on USA Network. He got Cannonball and he got Miz and Mrs. So he has connections with the USA Network, and he's been using them to screw over Otis. He used it to get Mandy to move to Raw, and he also used it to get Tucker moved to Raw. So Otis is by himself on SmackDown. At least they explained it. Well, you can dislike it as much as you want. At least they explained it, and it makes sense. And I enjoyed that. I like that. Mandy and Dana were the guests for the Miz TV segment. Of course, Miz said that Mandy should thank him because at least she's winning matches now. She's got a new partner, unlike Sonya Deville. And Dana Brooke is actually her friend. Natalya and Lana interrupted. And then Natalya and Lana got into a fight with Mandy and Dana. Who cares about any of that stuff? Then they went to a commercial. Then my cable went out because it's thunderstorming in Detroit. And when it came back on, Lara Sullivan was beating up John Morrison. So I'm guessing that's just pretty much what happened. Is when it came back from commercial, Lara Sullivan just mauled John Morrison. Then they did the title switch with New Day and the Street Profits. So then they did this segment that really didn't make much sense to me. Seth Rollins comes out to do his farewell address. He comes out to say that he did all these things for the greater good of Raw, and he's wondering, since he's been moved to SmackDown, who's going to step up and represent the greater good of Raw. And then Jeff Hardy comes out and says that, hey, Raw's going to be fine. I'm here. And then Seth Rollins told him, he's like, we're looking for a leader, and you're sure as hell not it. Get out of my ring. And I just thought to myself instantly, Seth Rollins versus Jeff Hardy is money. That could be a money match. And I'm glad they didn't spoil it. But then they went and did something that was even crazier. Because AJ Styles comes to the ring after Seth Rollins announces that Jeff Hardy has to fight Lara Sullivan on SmackDown. Why? Don't know. Because some people have to have farewell matches, which you would think they would already had their farewell match. Anyway, Lara Sullivan is going to fight Jeff Hardy on SmackDown. Yippee. Orange Cassidy thumbs up to that. In any event, AJ Styles comes out, and then he rips both Jeff Hardy and Seth Rollins. He says that he says Jeff Hardy came out like it was last call, which of course is alluding to him being drunk. And then he says he told Rollins to get the hell out of here because it was never a Monday Night Rollins anyway. And then Rollins gets mad and gets into AJ Styles' face, and then everybody starts fighting. And they end up having a triple threat match for no reason. There was literally no reason for this triple threat match. And then, of course, the triple threat match was good because everybody in the match is good. But it was for no reason. The winner got nothing. AJ Styles ended up winning when Elias showed up and hit Jeff Hardy with a guitar to set up their feud. Okay, I'm not a fan of Jeff Hardy's run so far. He's fighting Lara Sullivan, and he's got to fight Elias. He got to do work with Elias. It doesn't make any sense. Lana and Natalya lost to Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. This is only interesting because after Lana gets beaten, Natalya dumped her. Essentially just said, look, this doesn't work for me, brother. Enough's enough. We're done. And Lana was despondent. Now, this makes sense because they were telling a story throughout the night. As much as I don't like Raw, they were telling this story throughout the night between Natalya and Lana. And Lana was despondent and cried because Natalya dropped her. So then we get into the Ricochet business. So this was pretty cool. Ricochet comes out and he says, like, hey, there's a chance. I mean, Apollo Crews hadn't got drafted to SmackDown yet, but Ricochet was sort of, how you say, expecting it. He was sort of expecting Apollo Crews to get drafted to SmackDown. And he was like, I can't fight the Hurt Business by myself. So let's make this one more match, me versus any member of the Hurt Business. If I lose, I will join the Hurt Business. If I win, you guys have to leave me alone and stop trying to recruit me. MVP accepted, and then Cedric Alexander stepped up and said he'll take the match. And then they went to commercial or something like that. The next match was Angel Garza versus Andrade, which was short as hell. I'm surprised they had Angel Garza wrestle injured, but I'm not surprised it's WWE. It made no sense. And then Angel Garza won clean. Andrade just has no steam whatsoever. And this is when they were attacked. Zelina Vega was doing commentary. And this is when Alexa Bliss and the Fiend attacked Zelina Vega and Andrade. So they instantly killed Andrade. And then they injected some new life into him by having him be involved with the Fiend. So maybe they're about to turn Andrade and Zelina Vega babyface. Okay, we'll see. I think I'm more on the side of they just needed to beat somebody up to establish dominance between the Fiend and Bliss and other people, but whatever. Whatever floats your boat. The New Day defeated Ziggler and Rude. It was a pointless tag team match because Ziggler and Rude had already been drafted to SmackDown, so we knew they weren't going to win. They should have thought that through. At least if you're going to For starters, we knew Ziggler and Rude weren't going to win anyway because New Day just won the titles. Well, they were just given the titles. Okay. Anyway, we knew they weren't going to lose. So it was kind of triple pointless, like triple pointless. We learned that the Elias storyline is a continuance of the Jeff Hardy being drunk storyline, and the mystery man with red hair was never announced, even though everybody thought it was Sheamus. So apparently it's somebody else. So Cedric Alexander and Ricochet had a pretty good match. It keeps saying that Cedric Alexander went to Hurt Business boot camp. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means, but everybody takes it to mean very serious stuff. And Cedric Alexander was actually working very aggressive in this match. Not exactly stiff because he's a cruiserweight, but he was working very aggressively. And this is one of the better matches that they've had. And the match actually ended with an Eddie Guerrero finish, where the referee gets bumped for something silly, and MVP slides the chair in the ring. Ricochet intercepts the chair, smashes the chair into the ground, and then tosses the chair to Cedric Alexander, and then flops. The referee wakes up, sees Cedric Alexander with the chair, and disqualifies him. Ricochet wins. Hurt Business has to leave Ricochet alone. Not exactly how I would have booked a babyface to get out of that situation. It's fine for Eddie Guerrero. Not exactly fine for Ricochet. He's a guy who needs a pinfall win. He hasn't had enough pinfall wins. And I get it that you wanted to protect Cedric Alexander, but Ricochet needed a win, like a serious win, to get out of this feud and maybe to bump up to wrestling Lashley for the U.S. title. But now he just kind of seems like he's squirreled his way out of this feud. Look, as long as the feud is over, I don't give a fuck. But at the same time, come on, man. Give the guy a win. Shit. Cut the guy some slack. And then they had the main event was the Women's Battle Royal, which everybody thought was going to be Eva Marie. It ended up not being Eva Marie. I have a video on Eva Marie. I'm actually not going to cut that promo in here. I'm going to let that video come out on its own, baby. Oh, boy. In any event, this match was the main event of the show. And for some reason, Asuka was at ringside at first. And then, because she was doing commentary. And then, they put Lana through the commentary table. Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler did. But I haven't gotten there yet. But they cut away to Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. And we found out they had apparently been fighting all night. And I'm like, okay. But Nia Jax got 4 eliminations. Then after she eliminated like 4 people, she eliminated the Billie Kay and somebody else. Then she eliminated Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose. But she eliminated Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke as they were trying to eliminate Shayna Baszler. So she saved her partner. And then everybody else decided to jump Nia Jax because she was the biggest threat in the match. From that point, Shayna Baszler actually helped the pile throw out Nia Jax. And then Nia Jax got mad and put Lana through a table. Which, of course, made Asuka and everybody else scatter. So Asuka went to the back. And she watched the show from the back. The last 4 in the match was Natalya, Lacey, Liv Morgan, and Ruby Riott. So Lacey Evans was one of the final 4. And then the final 2 was Natalya and Lacey Evans, which is actually not bad. I'm not upset about that at all. And then Natalya won the match. And I literally wanted to rip out my bottom row of teeth. One of the first people I made a hit video on when I made this channel was Natalya, who is still one of the most boring individuals on the roster. And then they did something that was even dumber than Natalya winning. Lana gets back in the ring and throws Natalya out because Lana was pulled under the ring and was never thrown over the top rope. She was put through a table, but she was never thrown out. So now Lana won the match, throwing out Natalya, who dumped her earlier in the night. I'm cool with that. I'm not cool with Lana winning. I'm not cool with Lana winning the main event of Raw. I'm not cool with that at all. I'm cool with the story as it was set up. The story makes sense. Natalya basically lost faith in Lana, thinks Lana is a loser, and she lost to Lana. So now they have something going on here. Is Lana going to win the title? My God, if Lana wins that title, oh my God. You know what? It might actually be worth doing just to laugh, just for the good guffaw that I'm gonna have. It might just be worth doing, but I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening at all. I think Asuka just wins, and this is the folly of the 4 horsewomen being the only women with credibility, because Asuka now has to wrestle people like Lana, and it's really devaluing the title, if we're being honest. They're not putting forth the effort to build anybody else. They kind of have been putting some emphasis on Lana, but it wouldn't make sense for Lana to win the title unless she's going to get some type of help, which I think she probably will. And I think that probably will be Eva Marie. But the show ended with Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre fighting. Look, I don't understand what WWE is all about. They should know by now that the more contact people have, the less you're interested in seeing them fight at the pay-per-view. Common fucking sense. We see them fight too much. Somebody should have knocked somebody out, and that should have been the end of it. I've never understood the concept of 3-hour fights, 2-hour fights, whatever. But that was the episode of Raw. I'm never going to do a full Raw review again. Raw is pain. I would rather I like this angle or these angles and do videos for those angles where I could talk about those angles intelligently. I don't like doing show reviews. And even though I only do show reviews for NXT because very little happens, and same thing with AEW, there's very little to talk about. So you have to do pretty much a whole show review. Same thing with Impact and Ring of Honor. Because, there's not so much to talk about. So you have to do a whole show review. But usually with Raw or SmackDown, you have, 3 or 4 angles that you can actually talk about intelligently and ignore the rest of that bullshit. So that's my show review. I know I traumatized a lot of people. Let me stop for a moment. I know I traumatized a lot of people with that with the dildo video. Look, now you know how I feel when I turned on my Twitter machine and I see this man trying to force this other man onto this dildo. Now you know how I feel. But the important thing is I thought that everybody needed to see it. Everybody needs to see that shit because you need to see what wrestling has devolved into. There was also a dancing segment. I didn't know that about that. There was also a dancing segment from that GCW video. The same show apparently with Marco Stunt and Danhausen, who I think is a fucking goof. But that's wrestling. If you were offended by the dildo, my bad. But you waited 40 minutes for an apology on the dildo. It's half-hearted. I'm sorry. But I thought it was necessary. It was necessary for you to see it. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Hit the Cash App to donate for the channel, at least for right now. And like the video, share, and thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you guys enjoy the channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.